Good morning all, and thanks for your scene setting, Joe. It's great to see the in-flight catering topic firmly on the agenda for this webinar, because who doesn't love food? And seeing food and beverage come back on board is really going to be key, in my opinion, to making the passenger experience enjoyable and normal again. So with me today is Sarah Klatt Walsh, now an independent consultant within the in-flight industry with over 30 years experience of creating catering, product and customer experience with Swissair, Swiss and most recently British Airways. And she started her career with Gate Gourmet, so she really has had onboard experience from pretty much all angles. So welcome Sarah, and thanks for joining us. You're based in Switzerland, so tell us first a little bit about life there and how the lockdown has been for you. Is some semblance of normal life resuming now?
Okay. Sure, Julian. First, hi, and thanks so much for having me on today. Yes, I would say in Switzerland, life is getting fairly back to normal. I think that we're able to do kind of the everyday things here. Most things are open. Sometimes I think things are moving a bit too quickly, and not all the Swiss like to wear masks, so that gets a little bit touchy. But in general, the country is in a good place. I think Switzerland in general has a very solid safety social net. The government took quick action very early on, and so I think the country as a whole is in a good place. As for myself, yes, the lockdown has been quite interesting. I think it probably hasn't impacted myself as much as others, as that I was already working at home prior to that, spending a lot of time at home. But I certainly missed travel. I should have been traveling a lot more for business. I should have been to the States a couple times to visit family, and obviously none of that happened. I'm not sure when it will pick up, hopefully soon. But in general, I think it was kind of an okay time. Spent a lot of time, we think about food, cooking a lot, and definitely missed some of my favorite restaurants, but food is certainly always on my mind.
Good, yes. I know what you mean. I think all our lives are revolving around what we're going to eat next. That's all there is to do at the moment.
Exactly.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us today. And we know your vast knowledge of the in-flight service is really, that you've gained from all those years on the front line is always much in demand. So we felt your experience within airlines particularly could really help us get a real handle on the challenges that our dear airline colleagues are facing right now, and the issues that they're grappling with as they try to create the future of in-flight. We do see some airlines slowly beginning to get back in the air, which is very exciting for everyone, but not all are resuming with the level of service and catering we've become used to. I've seen a lot of boxed concepts, for example, taking flight, and I just wondered to start off with what your views were on these. Is this really going to be the new normal, do you think?
Oh, well, let's hope not. I think, first of all, I think we have to kind of set the scene just with airlines. They've gone through an incredible, challenging time. I mean, not just airlines, the overall travel world, but airlines have been particularly hard hit. And I think it's going to just take some time for them to kind of get back to normal. They need to kind of reassess how they do things. They need to watch their budgets very closely. Costs are going to be the main thing that they're looking at in the next couple of years. So I think we're happy that there's food in general or at all on board. And the box concepts, I think it probably makes sense for a lot of airlines in a first step, something they can fairly easily put together fairly quickly. It gives customers a sense of confidence because it's kind of an enclosed, protected product. And so I think that's important in building trust with customers and building confidence. And so I think the box concept is a good just first step to get food and beverage on board at all.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I was thinking about the relative pressures on airlines to move on from these box concepts once they start to get some more passengers, going and more routes. And the costs, they may make sense in the short term with low volumes, but are they really a viable option in the longer term on high volumes? And are they really sustainable when we've been trying to move away from this throwaway attitude for in-flight product in the last few years?
Right, absolutely. And that is a problem, Julie. I think if we look at just the cost, you're right. I think with low volumes, the box concepts are probably less expensive. And again, that's part of the reason I think they make sense to get started. But as passenger volumes do increase, they will become more expensive. More expensive not only to the airline, but also costly to the environment. So it's something the airlines will need to think about. Rotables, of course, are longer lasting. They are much more premium in feel. They give a better opportunity for brand differentiation, but they can be a bit expensive in terms of getting started. If you have to purchase a lot, there's a high cost for one-off. However, I think most airlines probably have a huge stock of rotables on hand that they can probably just return to if they wanted to. And the key there would be, what do they do with them? How do they manage that process? And so I think going forward, it will be important to try to reduce to the max, and not just only in terms of thinking about cost, in terms of thinking about the environment. The products that we previously had on board, do we need to have the same style of product, or can we come up with something very different, very new? Do you need to have a tray, for example, with 15 items on it? Or can you reduce that down to 3 or 4? Can you rethink the materials that are used? Can you rethink what happens once the rotables are used up? How are they circulated again through the system? Which pieces are used for what? I think all that kind of design thinking needs to be brought into detail and focused on. And I think that there's a couple of airlines that have done good work with that already pre-COVID. And if you think about, for example, Delta and their bistro concept, they've done exactly that. They have 2 or 3 materials that they're working with to offer an incredible service. They've introduced a closed loop, I'm still thinking about food, closed loop system in terms of recycling. And I think that kind of really connects the dots in a really positive way. So I think that's a good step, a good way of thinking to go forward.
And yes, I agree. I mean, there's a lot that's been done around sustainability issue, in the past. So it's just not going to go away, is it? I think, maybe at the moment, hygiene has trumped sustainability, but, I think that's going to move back up the agenda pretty quickly, isn't it? And
yes.
The one thing I have heard quite widely discussed as key to that is perhaps much more digitalization. I mean, obviously, only loading exactly what the passenger really wants is the kind of holy grail of in-flight sustainability, isn't it? And good food and beverage service. So do you think that's coming closer and, is getting nearer to being a kind of a reality now?
Oh, absolutely, Julie. I think that the topic of digitalization has just been accelerated massively through COVID-19. And I think you see it just in our everyday lives, the way we do a lot more shopping online, the way we are ordering meals for takeaway online, our entertainment, everything is online. I think what is happening in our daily lives is going to also then end up on board in some format. And so I think the topic of pre-order, pre-select is really important. I think it makes a lot of sense, not only in terms of customer choice and the customer experience, but also in terms of the environment and reducing waste. So there's really a lot of positives around that. And luckily, I think there's already a couple of suppliers that are out there with really good solutions that exist today. You think about Gate Group with their ePACS solution, or you think about Retail in Motion with their pre-select, pre-order systems. I think it's interesting about both of those, they're both able to link to the cabin crew's devices, which again makes the service not only more efficient, but helps reduce that contact on board. So I think there's already out there some really good solutions. Also an interesting new player, or fairly new player on the market called AOE. And they're kind of unique because they offer a an omni-channel platform in e-commerce. And they work both with rail, retail, and airlines, airports, and are able to kind of link them all up and connect the dots in a different way. And so that really kind of, I think, enhances the customer experience, the topic of choice, and much more convenience for the individual customer. So I think that's one to watch in the future. And I think we'll see more players emerging in the market as well.
Right. Yes, it's quite exciting to see how finally digitalization is becoming a kind of a solution to, we always knew it was there, but now it's really is sort of coming into its own, isn't it? So that's great. So just just to draw things to a close, and with the benefit of your experience from past crises, are there some glimmers of hope for the onboard catering sector? Do you see some light at the end of the tunnel? We've seen some new creative ideas that are they giving you hope for the new era in catering, and what do you think we might look forward to?
Okay. Yes, well, I definitely see some light to the end of the tunnel, Julie. And I think that one of the areas that we're going to see a lot of, I should say, more focus on is the topic of collaboration. And we heard about that a lot last year, just in linking up sustainability and collaboration. I think we're going to hear more about that also in terms of wellness. And I think you'll see that brands and suppliers and perhaps healthcare or tech experts, academia will work together to really bring new innovations to the table. So I think that's going to be quite exciting. And we've recently heard about a few new, say, innovative concepts that have just recently been launched. One of those, for example, is the in-bowl flywell concept that offers not only very fresh and very healthy food, but offers as well kind of a well-being element to go with it. And I think that's quite unique and quite interesting. Another one to mention perhaps more on the airport side is the Safe Go concept, where AI is working to help establish a truly contactless experience throughout the airport. So I think there's some really interesting things happening. And again, I think we're going to hear a lot more about that going forward.
Great. Well, sorry.
I was going to say, I just want to say, I think, when we talk about the topic of health and well-being, I think there's going to be, in general, excuse me, a lot more focus on that as well. And I think people like you and I are just very concerned about how can I ensure I stay healthy, that I can boost my own immune system so that I can, I would say, avoid this COVID-19 in the future. And I think there'll be a lot of different suppliers and people working on solutions for the airline industry to help that. Airlines, of course, have been working on wellness in the past. It's going to continue to grow. And when you couple that with kind of the growth of data and pre-order and tech in general, you're going to see that people are able to not only get what they want, but when they want it and how they want it. And so I think it's going to be a really exciting future. I'm just really keen to see what comes next. But I think it's going to be a really good fresh start and a great time to kind of just reset the overall customer experience going forward. So yes, a new era and definitely very exciting.
That's great, Sarah. Thank you so much. It's so lovely to hear sort of lots of ideas and optimism for the future, because I think everyone in our sector has been like, we've kind of been in shock, haven't we? We haven't really known what the hell's hit us for a few months, and then gradually, it's all coming back to life. And we know our sector is endlessly creative, and as you say, we have come, through downturns before and come back stronger. So I'm sure, you're right, and given time, we will do so again. So thank you so much for sharing your views and getting this webinar underway. And I'm sure I speak for everyone when we say our hearts go out to those within the airlines that are trying to rebuild, but we know as an industry, we're good at pulling together, and now we're all eager to get on with it and see what this new normal begins. And some of it you have outlined, and let's get going with it. So thank you for your time.
You're very welcome, Julie. Thank you so much.
Great. And I'm sure this is something we can discover more about now. So we will now open it up to our great panel and get some additional perspectives on the new era ahead. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Julie.